Presenting my new workshop. Yay! Been like 2 years, I know. I've been very busy with all sorts of other stuff. And so I wanted to get going with a new project. So I did something I haven't done in like 30 years, a Revell scale model of Das Boot. And I'm not going to go too much into detail of the assembly because I just followed the instructions obviously and ignored them as I saw fit. However, just a few pointers. I was kind of new to this whole painting thing, and I can give you one piece of advice. Always use a primer and use an airbrush system, because check out these results. Check out the water line and just the smooth distribution of color. I mean, that is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. However, a little too beautiful and a little too much like just straight out of the dry dock. So first of all, let's get a few details going. You start out with taking some of the scrap plastic here, heat it up, and pull it into a long spaghetti. I actually got one piece out of this, which was like 3 feet long, almost a meter. And yeah, I mean that was quite impressive of how elastic this stuff is. And with that, I wanted to include a few things. For example, here this handrail. And also the net cutter. However, I decided not to go through with this plastic because it was a little too thick, and so I ended up using a slightly different method at the end. However, here for the turret, all other models have this star pattern on the bulk here, surrounding the turret, and it looks so nice. And I don't know why they included it, so I used this plastic in order to add that. Right, so let's get into the weathering. Obviously, less is more, because you don't want to overdo it and get the settings just right at 15 psi or 1 bar for the airbrush system, and then make just some light notions here and there with the rust. And with that, it looks a heck of a lot different and a heck of a lot more realistic. I mean, this was actually quite a fun. It was a little bit nerve-wracking because you really don't want to mess it up. Once I had to repaint portions of the hull, but overall I was happy with it, and as project number 1 in terms of modeling and weathering, I'm happy. Now the net cutters, which are these steel cables that come down from the tower, are actual steel cables at 0.1 millimeter strength, and I used some old cable sheathing in order to come up with these little beads which you see on them. So I threaded them into the steel cables, painted them black, here still in gray with the primer, and that was it. Turned out quite nicely. Now let's get started on the diorama. It turned out that I got a perfectly fit piece of extruded polystyrol foam, which is great and perfect for carving and modeling. So I got the hull while it was still in construction and outlined the frame of the hull. And once that was done, I got myself a scalpel, a razor sharp blade to start cutting. I cut it a little deeper in the back or in the stern section, and left the front or the bow a little up front because I want to get this sort of action riding the waves kind of thing going. So yeah, there it is, halfway in the water. Now to get started, I got some, I'm going to say aluminum foil, or you guys from the British Isles, I know it's properly pronounced aluminium. And in German we also say aluminium, but for some reason, you know, the Americans say aluminum, and I'm going to stick with that because that's the way I'm used to do it. So this is aluminum foil to make a snug fit for the hull inside the foam. And I was ready to do the landscaping, or better yet the scenery of the waves. And so first you gotta roughen up the surface with a cutter knife, and then just take simple white glue. Nothing special, just straight from the shelf white glue in order to make the aluminum foil stick on the foam. Go piece by piece, however you want to do it. It helps a little to look at a couple of rough sea pictures online, just to, you know, get sort of a feeling on what waves are supposed to look like. And once you get that feeling, this kind of looks like it's supposed to look, then just leave it at that. Don't overdo it. And with these few first scenery shots, I was actually quite happy. So once you get the waves in place, it's time to make the final layer. Because you have all these little crumbles of aluminum foil laying around, you take one final piece of evenly spread out aluminum foil, and with this you have a crack-free upper layer. Now it shouldn't be too smooth, obviously. This should still look like water, and you still want to get into those little wave details that you have pre-shaped on the first few layers of the diorama. And so just kind of push this layer down, and once you get the rough shape in place, just get the glue and also evenly spread it around. Take your time for this, because this glue doesn't dry for hours, so you have plenty of time in order to spread it around, getting all the little cracks. I mean, the more you get distributed, the sturdier and the better the adhesive layer is going to be. So yeah, then just push it all down. Once again, take your time and make sure you don't get in any cracks. And then, yeah, just give it a shot. Obviously, this extra layer is not gonna narrow up the middle part too much. It's just a nice snug fit, and of course it pretty much still looks like it did before. However, with a much smoother surface. So cut off the extra areas on the side, the extra layers. And then once again finish the entire thing off with a final layer of white glue. And once that has dried up completely, you use a primer. I only had the gray primer, which was not ideal. A white primer would have been better, but might as well use a gray primer and then just paint the whole thing white in order to get a nice foundation for the upcoming watercolors. And very important, celebrate every little step of your progress. Kind of looks like the moon. Now, coloring the water was actually really a lot of fun, because this deep sea watercolor really did a great job, along with some clear blue to top it off. However, the clear coat was a mess, because you really have to use the right thinner for the gloss Britannia. And by using isopropyl alcohol, which I did, you just fog up the entire shop and you're left with basically no gloss whatsoever. The entire bottle just evaporated. So I just got a brush, a simple 2-cent brush, and check out this result. I mean, you can almost see a reflection in the water. That's the way you want it to be. So if you're uncertain of using the right thinner or whatever, just don't use a thinner, just use a brush and the gloss and you're good to go. Now for the next part, I did a little experimenting. I got some Mod Podge, some clear Mod Podge, and mixed it up with some of the deep watercolor in order to have sort of a blend in from the edges of the submarine to the actual water part. However, that didn't really matter, because I mean it was just a gray paste, and it basically stayed that way, so that's not really commendable. But it didn't matter, because here you can see almost the edge is almost seamless, so it didn't really matter. I glued it in there, and so I got it nice and fixed this way. Pretty clean. Now there are tons of different products in order to simulate water. Pastes and creams and all sorts of things, and gels. And I discovered that I didn't have to obtain anything. I still have this artificial water paste by Busch, which is basically just, you know, apply and watch the whole thing turn clear, which is really nice. And I started out easy with just a clear water coat on the edges of the submarine, and in order to take no risks. Because with all the splishy splashy water, you can really mess up the diorama, obviously. You use cotton, and just to have you know, a mixture of the water gel and also cotton back and forth in order to make a mild, realistic touch of the stirred up water. However, you really have to be careful, and sometimes you just have to pull the whole thing apart once you started with it, because you're just unhappy. And if you're unhappy, don't go through with it, just start over. As long as it's wet, it's pretty easy to work it. However, once it's dried, you're pretty much stuck with it, and it doesn't get much better. So yeah, experimenting with it is kind of nice, but at the same time you really have to rethink and redo. And like this here in front of the Canon, the splashing water. I mean, here on the video it looks really nice. And everybody was like, hey, this looks so great. I said, yeah, it does on the video, but in real life it sucks. So I ended up doing that like 3 times, and we'll see how it ends up in the end. It helps to pre-assemble some water like this, and then just to glue it on with some of the other water onto the sides of the submarine and just blend it in. Now you can get tempted to just leave this cotton like this because it does look kind of nice, but at the same time everybody notices that this is just cotton. And so I guess you could leave it this way, but at the same time everybody would be able to tell that you chickened out in order to make it look like actual water. So yeah, you'll see how this turned out in just a second. Now this part was really interesting. I saw this on another YouTube video where someone basically only painted the waves, and this turned out to be quite nice because this way you can get a really sharp edge of where the calm water is and where the splashing zone starts, especially around the edges. Those edges really have to be snow white, and just by using some acrylic paint in order to make that contrast going, and also to include all these little scattered white lines which indicate foam. That works out really nice. Get a really thin a brush for this, and let the foam just spread around the surface. Just a few lines and a few dots here and there, anywhere where foam looks realistic, in contrast to the more foggy, deeper layers. And don't overdo it, and you'll leave it just fine. One thing I did notice with some of the other dioramas online is that every time they make a diorama, the bow of the ship is basically just flying through the air. However, in order to make that movement going, I mean, this ship weighs a lot. It weighs like 750 tons, and so something has to be submerged in order to create that uplift, that buoyancy. That's why I figured it was kind of necessary to basically submerge the entire stern section underwater. Not too much, obviously, because I still want to see much of the submarine. But this way it gives it a little more realistic touch, especially also in contrast with the tower and also with the height of the waves around it. So maybe it's a little too anal, maybe too detailed, but it's always those little things that sometimes bother you if you take a closer look at them. And this was just the best. By googling 1:44 scale model submarine, German submariners. And I found 5 different figures, and they are a perfect fit for the submarine. All you have to do is paint them gray, give them a few details with the binoculars and the vests and in their faces, and that's all you have to do. Here in this shot you can tell that the wake of the ship is still under construction. You can see a lot of the cotton and a lot of empty spaces. However, once these figures arrived, I just had to paint them right away and install them as I saw fit. There were 6 figures in total, but one of them didn't really seem appropriate for the tower of the ship, so I got a sailor looking in each direction of the ship, and then I installed another sailor who kind of looks like the reporter in the book or the movie Das Boot. Lothar Günther Buchheim is his name. And he's having a little conversation in the winter garden where the turret is, the anti-aircraft machine gun there. There they are. And that really concludes most of the ship build. However, to make this nice and neat, you have to add a frame. And I wanted to add a little more than just a frame. I wanted to have a box casing for this diorama. I mean, everybody has a frame surrounding the entire thing, but I got these spare tongue and groove boards laying around, and then I got my miter saw here, and so I wanted to do something a little more advanced, a little more special for this whole thing. Now this looks very precise and very maybe even professional, I don't know, but this is not quite professional level. I mean, the saw is nice and everything, and also the scale that I have is actually accurate down to the millimeter, However, cracks can be visible at even 0.5 millimeter, and so give or take here and there. But it turned out nicely. This was just a rough assembly of when I cut the base frame out, and I was quite happy with it. And in order to get a smooth blend in from the water to the frame, I wanted to have one side of the boards in the actual watercolor, which I painted here, the deep sea watercolor, so the overlay is basically seamless. And then of course the mahogany wood color on the outside, and that was quite nice. Oh goody, it's almost finished now. So once again, get the simple white glue. The advantage of the simple glue is it's very convenient in order to glue wood and the extruded polystyrol foam together. For the wood itself, I highly recommend special wood glue. Especially this is waterproof wood glue because it's encasing water. Oh god, yeah, whatever. And yeah, in order to make this really nice and snug fit, wrap a belt around it. That way you're compressing the entire frame to the actual diorama. Also the cracks are almost non-existent. I mean, of course there are cracks, but it's fine. It's fine. Why am I painting the stand? Well, it's because I'm only using the front part, because these pictures of Das Boot and also the description with what kind of submarine this is and also the number, I wanted to add that to the side of the frame because these look really nice. I mean, you don't throw something like this away. So yeah, Type 7C submarine, U-Boot. Yeah, that was tricky, that was really tricky, but boom, there you go. At this point I was quite giddy because the whole thing was taking shape, and also these little ornaments, they really add to the appearance of the entire thing. So I figured since there's a little gap between the back part and also the top of this little rail here, I had to use a lot of hot glue. Make sure it's centered, make sure it's straight. And that was it. Here on top in bright wooden color without any varnish, you can see the lid. I didn't include the construction of the lid because I wanted to keep this video as short as possible. Here's the results. I mean, wow, this was so sweet. My wife completely freaked out. It's like, this looks so cool. I said, I know. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Also thank you for the comments, the likes, and the subscriptions. And until next time, take care and bye-bye.